really emotional. I'm also really tired.
I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats. And maybe that's a weird takeaway.
We're bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What I mean is, it's no longer 1937. This Snow White isn't the passive, delicate princess people might remember. She's bold, independent, and driven by her own goals. We've reimagined her as someone who doesn't wait to be rescued by a prince. She writes her own story, makes her own choices, and stands up for what she believes in. It's a fresh take that reflects the strength and complexity of women today.
Even more bad news for Disney's Snow White remake coming out next year.
I'm a narcissist.
There's another Snow White movie competing with it. It's called Snow White and the Evil Queen, and the producer promises to be more faithful to the spirit of the original animated classic.
Walt once said about Snow White, "To me, I thought it was the perfect story." Unfortunately, the company Disney founded doesn't agree with their founder and visionary.
Once upon a time.
Who is this? I like the beginning.
In time, a prince would come. Once upon a time, but now that time
Brings me back to my childhood.
is gone.
No freaking way! No! Yo! Brett Cooper?
And that's me. I'm Snow White.
It's so over for Disney because the conservative media company Daily Wire is making their very own rendition of Snow White starring Brett Cooper. It's a Snow White showdown, y'all. And not just that, they're also launching a rival children's network called Bent Key. And whether or not you're excited by the prospect of watching entertainment produced by a conservative company, I have to commend Daily Wire for putting their money where their mouth is.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince.
Like, sometimes I wonder, how do they cast these people for those movies?
What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Who here thought they had permission to say anything critical of...
You had one job. Just take the source material and just remake it. That's it, and you will win. Everybody's gonna go watch the movie.
Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro are doing their own live-action remake of Snow White with Brett Cooper as Snow White. Because she's like West End trained, right? So she's a very well-trained, supposedly a very well-trained actor who can sing, apparently. It's like the triple threat, podcast, act, sing.
Right.
And they announced it the other week, and it's going to be coming out next year.
God, I hope they...
Oh, cool. I'm literally the one in that trailer, and I'm still, like, so excited, and I get chills.
There I am, Gary, there I am.
The whole thing is just so cool. The moment when the music starts to crescendo as I turn around, when I first heard the music, I was like, stop right there. That's just so amazing.
Are fans stitching Rachel Zegler's Snow White for Brett Cooper's version? In this video, we dive into why Rachel's modern, outspoken take on the classic character is causing backlash, while Brett's faithful, traditional portrayal is gaining major support. From controversial changes to the story to the growing divide between modern reimaginings and nostalgic favorites, we're breaking down what's turning fans away from Zegler and drawing them toward Cooper. If you want to stay on top of the heated Snow White debate, be sure to like and subscribe to Woke Informant.
Backlash surrounding the upcoming Disney live adaptation of Snow White. The market is primed for someone to step in and tell a proper Snow White story. The Daily Wire has picked up the ball and ran with it, releasing a teaser trailer for Snow White and the Evil Queen, which will release on their streaming service called Bent Key.
He wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Sounds great. Here's our Snow White.
by 2030, it's predicted that 45% of women will be unmarried and childless. And why do you think that is? Well, it's because we've been told that, men are trash and that our career is the only thing that matters and that marriage and children will inhibit that, which is unnatural. That is biologically unnatural for women.
That does sound.
A rising conservative star from the Daily Wire has stepped into the role of Snow White, and the fallout has been nothing short of explosive. Her casting has sent shockwaves through social media, igniting fierce debate and dividing fans in what's quickly becoming one of the most controversial and talked about remakes in Disney history.
Save for the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and...
Cooper, known for her unapologetic views and strong rejection of woke narratives, is stepping into a role many believe belonged to Rachel Zegler, who had her own highly controversial vision for the iconic princess. While Zegler pushed for a modernized Snow White that broke away from tradition, Cooper is embracing a classic take, one that's resonating with fans who felt alienated by the changes. Zegler's version of Snow White, one without Prince Charming and centered on female empowerment, left many fans outraged. To them, her interpretation wasn't a refreshing update. It was a complete betrayal of the timeless fairy tale they cherished. Snow White, a story passed down for generations, had long symbolized romance, innocence, and the magic of true love. Zegler's decision to remove the prince and reframe Snow White as a self-reliant leader wasn't just a bold new direction. It was seen as an unnecessary rewriting of a story that many felt was perfect as it was. Adding fuel to the fire were Zegler's public statements, in which she openly criticized the original narrative. She dismissed the 1937 Snow White as outdated, calling its portrayal of love and happily ever after irrelevant in today's world. But perhaps her most controversial remark was labeling Prince Charming as a creepy stalker, a comment that struck a nerve with fans who grew up believing in the fairy tale's classic romance.
About the Snow White actress hating Snow White and like ripping on the 1937 original and so on and so forth and sort of mocking it. Look, you chose, that's the source material.
Yeah.
You don't, I mean, you're going to play Snow White. And she's catching a lot of backlash for that. But when you do a movie of that size, the studio tells you what the messaging they want to be.
Yeah.
You don't just usually come up with it on your own, because if you do, and it isn't what the studio likes, they go, hey, listen, doesn't jive with what we're doing. Can we put there? And that's shocking to me, because why do you hate your source material so much? And if you really want to create something brand new, just create a new character. Just do something new. Just go ahead.
As the son of the director of the classic Snow White spoke out, "My dad and Walt Disney would be turning in their graves over woke Snow White remake. Son of original film's director accuses Disney studio bosses of insulting the 1937 classic and destroying his father's creation." As you know, Rachel Zegler insulted the classic Snow White movie on several occasions in her interviews, calling it outdated when it comes to portraying women. According to her, the women in those movies wanted to be saved, and the new, modern version will have the Snow White focus on becoming the best leader.
Rachel Zegler's radical feminist diatribes are a massive turnoff and will likely be one of the very many reasons why Disney's live-action Snow White is going to be a massive flop. Her smug demeanor on the red carpet has drawn the ire of classic Disney fans who like the aspects of Snow White like true love and fantasy. They seek an escape from talk about feminism and politics and other realities. They want a fairy tale ending, not a cancel culture conscious cop-out. I never expected her to be a breadwinner or a girl boss. I wanted her to get saved by the prince, who, according to Zegler, was a creepy stalker all along.
Have you ever been to that Snow White ride at Disneyland?
I get stopped for photos every time I'm online for the Snow White ride, and it is I have to pretend like, oh God, well, crazy that we're in front of this.
Wait, how long?
Great to hear how much she appreciates the fans and her new movie, Snow White, which isn't even out yet.
I literally hate the movie. I think it's absolute garbage.
Are you talking about something else?
No, I'm talking about Snow White. The funny thing is, I only watched like 2 minutes of the cartoon 20 years ago, and I ended up taking a hammer and breaking my TV because I thought it was so awful.
So does she have a love interest in this movie?
Hell no! This is in 1937, and we're not in a Taylor Swift love song. There is no love story. She's an independent female lead. She ends up joining a pyramid scheme, and she becomes the world's biggest girl boss.
I'm Snow White, and I'm not some weak little princess. I'm a boss babe, and I'm here to overthrow
The evil queen?
the patriarchy, actually.
But Queen Grimhilda is a wicked witch.
Okay, that's offensive. Okay, those are rumors spread by insecure, toxic little men.
But she hired her huntsman to unalive you.
Iconic. She woke up today and chose violence.
Light, a move few fans appreciated, only deepened the backlash. Zegler's comments weren't widely seen as bold or empowering. Instead, many viewed them as a direct attack on the nostalgia and emotional connection people have to the original story. To longtime fans, these weren't just creative choices. They felt like a total dismantling of something sacred. The fairy tale wasn't just a movie. It was a cherished memory, a symbol of childhood magic, and for many, Zegler's version seemed to tear that down rather than build upon it.
Big news! Deadline reports the Daily Wire is making a live-action Snow White movie starring conservative YouTuber Brett Cooper. Watch the teaser.
Ben Shapiro is apparently putting the white in Snow White because the Daily Wire is remaking the Disney classic Snow White, starring conservative YouTuber Brett Cooper. The studio is said to be very excited about making this film with conservative values such as friendship, love, and unconsensual kissing.
Something I am curious on is how faithful they are to the original story.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not like campy or anything like that.
Yes. Something I find interesting, when you look at all the other Snow White live action.
Can't really say the same thing about Rachel Zegler. You know, it'd be one thing if Snow White turned around and put a MAGA hat on or some bullshit. That's not, people don't want propaganda on the other side. They just want propaganda-free entertainment.
It's Hollywood, baby. And that really is the main point. We're not trying to turn Snow White into something that it's not. We're not trying to turn Snow White into a MAGA conservative movie. We're just trying to represent the values that Snow White is based in, the timeless values that we all loved growing up that are sadly being forgotten in this new adaptation.
And now this is competition, right? This is America. If you don't want to see the woke Disney film, you have every opportunity now to go see this Daily Wire film.
Variety is the spice of life. Choice is great. Some kids, parents, families, young women might prefer the Rachel Zegler version. Some might want to watch the more stereotypical prince and princess fantasy or whatever it is, and they can watch the original, or they can watch the Daily Wire version, or you can watch all of them and decide what you like best, and that's fine and good. I think it is worth commenting on that the Daily Wire is doing something that's very interesting in trying to specifically, instead of just complaining that mainstream pop culture and entertainment is hostile to conservative values.
Now, just like all of the other remakes that have basically involved some cultural changes. The Daily Wire didn't like the live action remake for Snow White, which is starring a woman, an actress who's 22 years old. Her name's Rachel Zegler, and she is Colombian and Polish. She considers herself a white Latina, but I really think that some of the criticism toward her coming from conservatives isn't just about, Snow White being cast by someone who doesn't have like translucent skin. I think it also has to do with some of the comments that she's made about the movie itself while she's out there talking about it. We'll get to that in just a moment. But nonetheless, the Daily Wire decided to provide their own version, their response, if you will, to the live action remake of the Snow White movie.
It's time for some shameless self-promotion with the Daily Wire. And I'm being honest when I say it's shameless because I was the most excited person about this. I want to get involved somehow. I'm not sure how. I keep pitching myself, but they just don't want me.
What is this movie all about? Like, what started it off? Where did you get the first idea for it? And what are you hoping to accomplish with this one?
So we got the idea for it literally the day that Rachel Zegler did an interview in which she said that she hated the original Snow White and wanted to rip the guts out of it.
Weird.
And then Disney released those ridiculous cast photos of dwarves that were not dwarves, the multiracial, multi-ethnic, tall people and one dwarf. This is how we make decisions at the Daily Wire. I literally just emailed that to my business partner, Jeremy Boring, and I was like, we should do something like this. And Jeremy's like, okay, we're just going to make Snow White, but we're going to do it to all the specs, with music, with singing, with the original storyline in classic fashion that imbibes from the original well of the values. Specifically because if Disney wants to cede that field to us, we'd be fools not to take it. And we're kind of shocked by the fact that no other studio has done that. I mean, just on a pure market basis.
Wait a minute. That's not woke Snow White. Isn't that Brett Cooper from the Daily?
For many, Snow White represents a simpler, more innocent time in storytelling, a fairy tale untouched by modern politics or social agendas. Zegler's desire to make the film more politically correct, or woke, in the eyes of critics, was seen as deeply disrespectful to the original source material. It wasn't just about removing Prince Charming. It was about tampering with a beloved piece of cinematic history that, to many fans, didn't need fixing at all. The changes felt less like progress and more like erasure, turning a timeless tale into a battleground for ideology. Enter Brett Cooper. Her casting is being celebrated as a win by those who believe Disney has gone too far in its attempts to modernize and rewrite its own legacy. Unlike Rachel Zegler, who distanced Snow White from its traditional roots, Cooper has been vocal about her commitment to preserving the classic elements of the story, especially the iconic prince and the happily ever after love story. This return to form has struck a chord with fans tired of Hollywood's constant reinvention of beloved tales. Cooper's portrayal isn't just another casting decision, it's being seen as a bold statement. The Daily Wire, in choosing her, isn't merely selecting an actress, they're sending a clear message. Audiences are craving the timeless magic of the original, unaltered by today's political trends. For many, this move feels like a rejection of the politically correct version Disney was promoting, a version that strayed too far from the essence of the fairy tale. Fans who've long felt alienated by Hollywood's reimaginings are rallying behind Cooper. To them, she's a breath of fresh air, someone who understands the importance of preserving stories as they were originally told. Her casting signals that not every beloved narrative needs to be reshaped to fit a modern agenda. It's reassurance that there's still room for magic, romance, and the fairy tale endings generations grew up loving, without pandering to current cultural sensibilities. And the internet has responded. Social media is flooded with support for Cooper, with many declaring that this version will be the real Snow White. Memes mocking Zegler's version have gone viral, and hashtags like #NotMySnowWhite are trending. Some accuse Disney of caving to identity politics, while others see Cooper's casting as a hopeful return to classic, untouched storytelling, something many feel Hollywood desperately needs. But this isn't just about who wears the iconic dress. It's become a full-on cultural clash. On one side are fans who are fed up with woke reimaginings of their favorite stories. On the other, supporters of Zegler's progressive approach who argue it's time for fairy tales to evolve. The battle lines are drawn, and Snow White now stands at the heart of a much larger war over what storytelling should look like in today's world. And there you have it, the Snow White controversy that has everyone talking. Are you team Rachel Zegler with her bold, modern twist? Or are you backing Brett Cooper's return to the classic fairy tale? One thing's for sure, this battle is far from over. Drop your thoughts in the comments and join the conversation. And if you want to stay in the loop on all the latest Hollywood controversies and movie drama, don't forget to like, subscribe to Woke Informant, and ring that bell so you never miss the next big story.